Please introduce your name and address, please.
My name is Corrine Unruh. I live at 17 The Promenade. Lord Mayor, Chairman, members of council, and attendees. I'm a lifelong resident of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and I speak to you today with great concern for the future of the Rand estate, the King Charlotte neighborhood, and the entire town. I have had the privilege of experiencing the estate as part of my life growing up and in adulthood. The stunning walled perimeter has always been a reminder of the gracious family and stately private home that occupied the estate. And while it has been on a very grand scale, it was residential living. Over time, as one large estate became impractical, changes occurred that were strictly residential. The developments which were allowed to proceed were all purely residential in character. The many residents from Christopher Street and Weatherstone Court present tonight will attest to the quality of residential life which continues the tradition and character of the estate. At the same time, the surrounding area has undergone changes. The King Charlotte neighborhood has been a separately identified residential area for decades. The topic of its own planning document, which precedes the existing official plan by many years. I have included a copy of this document with my presentation. The addition of streets like the Promenade, Harmony Drive, and James Street has continued the practice of keeping the King Charlotte area residential. The rejection of the proposal for the Park Court Hotel in the 80s led to the creation of Park Court Street, and yet another beautiful residential addition to the neighborhood. Again in the 1990s, the zoning for the Rand estate was maintained as residential when the Foxes were requesting a change for their School of Philosophy. The character of the area was recognized as residential, and the developer was not granted a zoning change, and limited to a site-specific use for the institution they created. Special assurances were also given to neighboring residents at that time to strongly limit the impact that the permitted use might have. The emphasis on maintaining the residential character of the King Charlotte area is also reflected in the current official plan. As previously stated on page 77, that the Pillar and Post Hotel is not intended to serve as a node for expanded general commercial activity. We meet tonight to consider the future of a landmark within a neighborhood in our town. I urge you to consider the history and precedent which exist in this area. Preserving the residential character of the neighborhood must be one of the main criteria for choosing a development option. The developers stated in an ad placed in the Niagara Advance last fall that they invite members of the public to assist them in creating the future use of this important historical property. Yet it seems that the feedback and input is not being taken seriously. Residents of the entire town, those living in the area, and the immediate neighbors all have made their opposition to commercializing the property clear. Yet no other options are entertained or, I fear, even explored. It is very easy to picture a residential development behind the wall which would fit perfectly into the character and ambiance of the surrounding neighborhood. And please consider this, that their own PKF Consulting was engaged by the developer to create the report justifying the need for this commercial development. As previously stated on page 80 of this study, the consultant actually acknowledges the direct benefit to the town in property taxes for residential development would be greater, estimated at $385,000 to $415,000, as opposed to only $352,000 for the commercial option. So I should suggest to you in closing that residential zoning has been appropriate for the Rand estate throughout its long history. Residential zoning anchors an extraordinary neighborhood in the present, and residential zoning should be the foundation of planning for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lynch. For the record, please. And it's the black market found right there.
My name is Brian Parks, and I live at 5 Christopher Street. Our back property line is 140 feet wide and directly abuts the Randwood estate in the area of the Livonia House Building number 2 and the coach house identified on the site plan as building number 3. I'm opposed to the application for rezoning from residential to commercial and the amendment to the official plan. The area is residential and should stay that way. If it were to happen that the application was approved, the following would have a major impact on our lives. 1. A parking ramp leading into and out of a 119-car underground garage will be built a few feet from our property. The result in noise and air pollution problems coming from 119 cars, light pollution from cars going and coming, garage doors going up and down, catch basin noise at the bottom of the ramp, exhaust fans, car beepers, etc. I should add that the applicant has promised on 4 occasions to move the ramp to the other side of the courthouse, but is still shown on the site plan submitted to the town dated August 3, 2011, exactly where it was last year. Number 2, buffer zone. There currently exists a 50-foot buffer zone mandated by council to be maintained along the portion of the property line abutting the lots located on Christopher Street. This zone was mandated by council as part of the approval to amend the town's official plan and zoning bylaws to permit the proposed School of Philosophy application by the Foxes in 1996. The buffer zone was put in place to keep the 100 or so students from invading our properties and to lessen the noise. To not retain this zone would be a travesty when one envisages the numbers of people who could be on the property if the application is approved. 3, floodplain. Our property, according to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, is within the floodplain boundary, and when one looks at the drawing, it is pretty obvious that the flood risk area runs well into the property immediately behind us. When asked how water runoff is going to be dealt with, not only in the floodplain area, but in the areas where new buildings and parking lots are to be erected, the answer was a 10-foot concrete culvert will be installed. So now not only do we have a parking ramp in our backyard, we also have a 10-foot concrete culvert in the bed of One Mile Creek tributary, hooking up to another 10-foot concrete culvert in the bed of the 1 Mile Creek, which merge at the corner of our property. All this construction will take place within the 50-foot buffer zone and will destroy the dozens of trees and shrubs on both sides of the waterway. Site measurements. The distance of 121 feet is shown to exist between our house and building number 7, which would lead you to believe the developer has provided for 121 feet of space between building number 7 and our house, when in fact the distance should be shown as 71 feet to our property line, not to our house. This appears to be a deliberate attempt to mislead one to assume the distances are greater than they are, and in fact the developer has chosen to ignore property lines and shown distances to our very homes. Furthermore, within that 71 feet 71-foot area, there's another 50-foot buffer zone which leaves 21 feet for the two-way ramp and a 10-foot culvert mentioned before. We purchased our home 20 years ago, and what has always been a residential area. The official plan has been amended since that time, and the neighborhood remained residential. We respectfully suggest that that's the way it should stay.